Hello everybody and welcome to Bright Weird. Interesting subject this one that builds on some of my previous videos. It's packed full of haphazard metaphysical speculation and it's a video that I've wanted to make for some time. This is Portals to Higher Dimensions.
It was actually this lecture, and not another, that came to me on the evening of the summer solstice in 2022. I was standing in a field watching the sun set and had an overwhelming urge to start speaking. I pressed record on my phone and something very close to the following resulted in one take. It is true in the dimensional sense that there are many things around us that cannot be seen, and simply because they cannot be seen does not mean that they do not exist. An example of this is radio waves, which cannot be heard or felt by the basic human senses, but they exist all the same. And the fact that unseen radio waves exist is undeniable and proven by the manipulation of modern technology, which, by the miracle of science, enables us to use those unseen and unheard parts of the electromagnetic spectrum to our modern benefit and success. But there are also other things beyond the electromagnetic spectrum that equally exist and are equally unseen. We evolved or were designed to survive, not necessarily to see the full picture. What we experience in the waking state is a gnat's whisker of what is actually all around us. For a moment, I will ignore the higher dimensions and just concentrate on something called the electromagnetic spectrum to prove the concept that you do not see everything. The electromagnetic spectrum is measured in cycles per second, or hertz, and our ears work between 20 to 20,000 hertz, and our eyes operate between 400 and 790 terahertz. Apart from these very narrow slithers where we can hear and see, we are essentially blind to nearly all that happens around us. You cannot see radio waves, microwaves, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays, but they exist all the same. I should mention that below the range of our hearing are subaudible frequencies from 1 Hz to 20 Hz, things that you cannot hear, but we can feel. It is in this range that there is something called the Schumann resonance at 7.83 Hz, which is the vibration of the Earth. This is a fascinating subject in its own right, and one that I covered in another lecture called Ley Lines and the Grail Frequency, ground that I will slightly retread in this lecture, but I digress. So considering the electromagnetic spectrum, you can now see that there are many things around us, and just because we cannot see them does not mean that they do not exist. Now we will step beyond the electromagnetic spectrum into dimensions. Our basic perception is that we exist in 3 dimensions and also experience a 4th dimension of time. I've covered this in several other videos, so I will not dive too deep in this one. Essentially, there's the first dimension, which is a single point. The second dimension can be shown as a square, or Carl Sagan's flatland. The third dimension can be shown as a static, unmoving cube. And the 4th dimension can be shown as a cube that moves, also known as a tesseract. You can point to the first 3 dimensions of space, up, down, left, right, forward, and back, but try pointing into the direction of time. The dimension of time is barely understood by man, and it has little to do with clocks. Time is a tangent or direction that you cannot point to, and in which we cannot freely travel, being stuck falling forward at a rate of 1 second per second relative to ourselves according to the laws of relativity. This direction you cannot point to is the arrow of time. It is entropy. It is cause and effect. Time is the dimension that brings life and experience to the world around us, and Hawking called time the 4th dimension. But it is true that above and beyond the first 4 dimensions known by modern science as space-time, there are higher, stranger dimensions where man can strive to see the miracle, majesty and mystery of the real world that exists all around us. Those higher dimensions, just like the blind spots in the electromagnetic spectrum, are equally unseen to us, but they exist all the same. For it is in these hyperdimensional states beyond the lower realms of space-time that we can find the most divine and incredible revelations about the multiverse in which we reside, or to put it another way, to know oneself. Throughout the ages and across all nations and all religions, wise men have sought to delve into higher dimensions, and to do so, they have utilized occult knowledge passed down from the sages of old to achieve something known as higher states of consciousness. And it is through these higher states of consciousness that enlightened men have been able to sense and experience a greater understanding beyond the mundane lower reality of the first four, in which we can easily perceive. The nature of the higher dimensions is unknowable and unfathomable to the majority of mankind, but it is through the mystery and majesty of ancient arts, through much meditation and hard work, that man can achieve those elusive higher states of consciousness and see beyond the veil. But it is not just psychological techniques that are utilized to gain access to these higher states. To assist man to reach those higher dimensions, there are known to be certain special places on Earth where people can more easily obtain the higher dimensional state of consciousness, and these special places I will refer to as portals. There are certain places on the Earth that are very special. Our ancestors called them many things, but one of the names was thin places, as the veil that separates the lower dimensions of space-time from the higher dimensions of hyperspace seems a little thinner or more subtle in certain localities. Going back a moment to the electromagnetic spectrum, which I mentioned earlier, there are frequencies both audible and inaudible that can affect human beings, and I mentioned the Schumann resonance of 7.83 Hz. You cannot hear it, as it's just below the range of your ears, but you can feel it. And if you're subjected to this frequency and pay particular attention, the hairs on your neck might just stand up. There are known to be certain places on the Earth where the Schumann resonance comes naturally out of the ground, and even today there are still grounded humans so in touch with the Earth that they can easily identify these places. If you go walkabout with an Aboriginal and ask them where the energy spots are, they would likely point and say, "There it is, over there." With our socks and shoes and the nonsense of our modern world, we are not grounded. We have forgotten how to do this, but our ancestors knew all too well how to identify those elusive access points to hyperspace simply by feeling the resonance of the Earth. A portal can be opened at a physical place, or it can be a state of mind. But if you combine a state of mind with a special place, one can more easily slip beyond the veil and glimpse those majestic higher planes of existence. The most common example of a physical portal seen in this modern world is that of a church or a temple. These physical locations are where people go to conduct ritualistic or religious activities. Places where we can combine the power of the mind and the power of a special physical location. Many of these ancient places were holy before the concept of the religion which now camps at those hallowed sites. I have no doubt that in the days of old, man in previous incarnations understood just what can be achieved at these thin places. And it's a little known fact at the site of the majority of medieval cathedrals built by the masons of old, there was previously something else. A quoit, a stone circle, a standing stone, even pyramids to identify to the ancients that special thin place. As a side note, I'm quite confident that pyramids were never built as tombs, for the same reason that cathedrals were not built as tombs, despite people being buried there, but I digress. And it is at these great places of religion, before the concept of modern religion, where man could more easily raise their consciousness to a state where they can experience the majesty and great wonder of higher dimensions. However, You do not need a special place or a thin place to tear open a gateway to a higher dimension. After all, you can pray anywhere. It's just easier at special places. Think of the thin places as a Wi-Fi hotspot with a really good signal for gaining access to higher dimensional states of consciousness. To pass through these thin place portals and to enter those higher dimensional states, you must use the power of your mind, the power of the third eye, the eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye, that thing which the Sumerians identified as the pine cone, which, of course, alluded to that part of the human brain known as the pineal gland, that sensory organ placed inside the center of our brains by natural design and not generally used in our waking lives. The pineal gland is certainly of great use in a higher dimensional sense. In the days of old, many cultures around the world used the concept of false doors to illustrate and identify access points to realms beyond. Egyptian false doors are a common sight and were quite often placed in temples or resonance chambers, rooms designed to resonate at certain frequencies, linked, no doubt, by mode to the Earth frequency of 7.83 Hz, known as the Schumann resonance. An example of this are the chambers under the Queen's Pyramids adjacent to the Great Pyramid at Giza in Egypt. But false doors are not restricted to Egypt, they are found across the world. In Peru, there is an incredible example of a false door called a Maru Maru, which is said by locals to be an interdimensional gateway. Some people who visit this place are overwhelmed with powerful and strange feelings. Others simply experience the head and neck raising. Some people, when touching the false door with their eyes closed, see starfield-like lights rushing towards or away from them, something I have experienced at a particular standing stone at an ancient thin place near my own home. Those who understand the secret of interdimensional travel may, however, choose a more private location to conduct their workings than a well-trodden tourist site. Whether you believe or whether you do not believe, the fact remains. Ancient cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years all used a similar design and the same concept of a false door to express their understanding of higher dimensions. The concept to the ancients, however, was more akin to a doorway between the land of the living and the land of the dead. But don't let the word dead confuse you. Don't let the word dead bring up thoughts of death or ending. The word dead should be considered to refer to no longer human or non-human entities. And this is where it gets weird. Just as fish swim unseen beneath the surface of the waves, in higher dimensions beyond the reach of man, the other side of the veil, if you will, non-human creatures and beings exist that cannot be seen with the eyes or heard with the ears or touched with the hands. Despite our lower dimensional blindness, these interdimensional entities can be freely communed with through the power of mind in the timeless worlds of hyperspace. It is believed that through the power of something called ritual and through the power of your mind's eye, sometimes known as imagination, mankind can access those elusive places that are packed full of wonder. Higher dimensions are tiled against all except those who have the eyes to see. And do not be distracted by the word imagination. I am confident these places are very real. One must consider the possibility that when we are awake, we are dreaming, and when we are dreaming, we are awake. For to be truly awake, one must revel in both aspects of human consciousness. Half of our life is spent in the sleeping state, and the other half in the waking state. Who is to say which is more real? Master Zhuang, a Chinese philosopher, once wrote, "I do not know whether it was then I dreamt I was a butterfly, or whether I am now a butterfly dreaming I am a man." In my experience, it is the bridge between awake and asleep where we are free to travel into those higher dimensions and connect with higher and lower aspects of ourselves. If you can balance carefully at the access point without falling awake or slipping into sleep, anybody may, with surprisingly little practice, see beyond the veil. You must understand the true duality of mankind's light and dark consciousness and balance in the center. One might say that it's all make-believe, and equally at the same time say that it's all real. Both are a fact. To quote Lon Milo Duquette, it's all real and it's all in your head. You just don't know how big your head truly is.
Thanks for watching to the end. Please do like, share and subscribe. I'm Steve. This is Bright Weird. Thanks for watching.